Welcome everyone to the Montessori Family Life webinar series. We're so glad you're here today. If you're returning, welcome back. If you're new, welcome to the broadcast. Today our topic is out of balance, cultivating equilibrium. I want to start with introducing the panel. First of all, Cheryl Allen. She is on the Montessori Foundation staff and she works closely with me on the Montessori Family Alliance and the rest of our team that works on that together. And she also was a teacher at Newgate School in the lower elementary division for about 10 years and quite a few years before that at another school up in Massachusetts. She also was a child who went to Montessori school for many years of her life. So lots of Montessori back there in her background, and both of her children graduated from Newgate School. So there we go. Our second panelist is Jonathan Wolf. John's here this afternoon, and he is an educational consultant, an international speaker at conferences and presentations. He's an author did I say adult educator? He's an adult educator and also has two children. So is a parent of grown children. He now has also grandchildren. So he has a lot of Montessori experience as well. And by the way, he taught in a 3 to 6 classroom at the early part of his career. So that's terrific. Thanks, John. Cool. And then next we have Dorothy Harmon. And Dorothy is with us today. She is a good friend of ours. She comes to many of our webinar sessions, and she's on our team that helps put the webinars together for the Montessori Family Life webinar series. Dorothy has been a Montessori educator at the 3 to 6 level for many decades, and she's now left the classroom, however, is continuing to do lots of things within the Montessori community, one of which is some educational consulting. I think you're still doing a webinar with Aileen Wolf with that group. Okay, and Dorothy has written a book called Intentional Connections, and I think you've just finished a second book, correct?
I did. That's
Yay. All right, we'll look for that one. Dorothy, what's the title of that one?
It is The Companion to Intentional Connections, which is a book for teachers. This is Intentional Connections for Parents, conversation between the two.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And finally, Cassie Mackey. Cassie is with us today, this afternoon. We're so glad you're here, Cassie. She also has been a Montessori teacher for many decades. She was the principal of a charter school in Arizona, a Montessori charter school, and she taught at the upper elementary level with her husband. And I think sometimes their dog joined them for classes as well. So Cassie also is a writer. She writes for many different publications, one of which is Montessori Leadership. Another one is Tomorrow's Child magazine. She also is doing some educational consulting, and she speaks at many conferences and gives many presentations for schools for professional development and so forth. So, Cassie, we're glad to have you with us today.
Thank you.
I'm Lorna McGrath. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Lorna McGrath, and I'm your host. And I've been around the Montessori Foundation for a very long time and Newgate School for a very long time. Before that, teaching in Palm Harbor, Florida, and also teaching up in Connecticut at the 3 to 6 level. I also have 2 kids of my own who are grown, and I have 1 grandchild. And he often joins us at the webinar, not intentionally, but he just does. So if Otis shows up, be ready. All right.
Dorothy, you need to introduce your cat.
Cassie?
I just said Dorothy needed to introduce her cat.
Oh, right. Oh, look who's with us.
This is Timmy. He doesn't miss many webinars.
All right. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get going with our topic. Again, it's out of balance, cultivating equilibrium. And we'll go to the slide. The first slide, we just wanted to kind of talk about, there's so many activities, so many schedules, so many events and practices and rehearsals that families can get inundated with things to do and schedules to keep and getting to things on time and fitting everything in. And if you have one child, it can sometimes be a challenge. If you have more than one, it just becomes more and more challenging. The more people you have in your family, the more things that are going on. And so what we wanted to talk about today was trying to create some balance, trying to create some equilibrium. And so we said cultivate equilibrium. And when I looked up those two words, just to sort of see what the dictionary said for definitions for them, one of the words that they used instead of cultivate was foster. And I really liked that word, foster. Especially for parents, we're fostering many things with our children, helping them to experience different things, helping them to try out different things. And so we are fostering things and fostering habits and how we live our lives and the idea of that. And then when I looked up equilibrium, it talked about evenness and calm. And so if we put those two words together, foster evenness, foster calm, I really like that, because really that's what we're going to talk about today. And if you notice in the illustration, it's got several balls that somebody has. Maybe they're balancing them, maybe they're juggling them, who knows? It's a still picture. But there are lots of things in our lives that we do have to make room for and make sure we have time for in our family lives. So that's what our webinar will be about today. Anybody want to add anything to that before we go on to our next slide? Right. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about as we talk about fostering evenness and calm is, so what are the benefits of this whole process that we're going to go through? And there are lots of them. So we put some broad categories here. Benefits of a balanced family life. And we'll talk about each one of these as we go through them. The first one is physical health. So one of the benefits of a balanced family life is, generally speaking, everybody's health, physical health, is better when we're not doing too many things, when we're not overscheduled, when we're not racing around and in a sort of a frenzy all the time. Our physical health actually benefits from that, and we tend to be healthier. We tend not to get sick as often. We tend not to get colds as often, or the flu and those kinds of things. Someone else want to pick one of the other ones and talk about those benefits?
For mental wellness, there's actually research that whatever connections you're making regularly in your brain strengthens those, kind of like a road, makes it easier. So if you're making we're always late and we need to rush, that's what becomes easiest in your brain for the connection to be made. So making those calming connections and pausing connections makes that more likely to happen in your brain. I feel like my clear communication is not straight in my brain right now.
Are you overscheduled, Cheryl?
Oh, no, it's a really cool concept. So I'm too excited to explain it clearly.
I've actually been looking at this illustration that we have on this page, and I really like it. And I think about the rocks as some of these different benefits to a balanced life. And as you can see, I mean, this probably isn't the easiest thing to do, to get all these rocks on this post balanced and so forth, but it sure does make a difference in how things go.
I'll address or try to address a better focus. One of Maria Montessori's great discoveries in the spirit of self-directed learning or independent learning, which is what we're always shooting for with children in classrooms, is the benefits of concentration. That when I think Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist who recently passed away, talked about flow state. Getting into a really deep state of focus and concentration is optimizing learning and optimizing relationships, optimizing collaboration. So when children in a Montessori classroom, apart from family, are feeling a sense of equilibrium or balance, they actually concentrate more deeply and they get more learning done. They're more engaged in their learning happily and more deeply, more accuracy, more precision, more work completion, and more joy in learning. So that certainly is a benefit of more balance.
Absolutely. Thank you, John.
And I think that deep focus that you're talking about, John, and that concentration also allows for that time for what's important, because during that time, things come up that you wouldn't expect, or you didn't plan, or you didn't schedule. And those are some really rich moments for families, and it's really rich moments for learning. So that sustained concentration time without jumping from one thing to the other is really important to kind of integrate into your family structure, as we do in our classrooms. To run a classroom, you have to be structured in a way, but you have to allow these moments of concentration and learning to happen organically.
Absolutely.
Perhaps it's not necessarily a structured activity that we have to schedule our children all the time, but perhaps it could be structure time for the unstructured. In other words, allowing perhaps Wednesday night is the night that we don't schedule anything. It's family time or it's alone time, so that we can decompress from what are very busy scheduled lives, and we all need that downtime.
Dorothy, there's actually a relatively new organizational psychology term for what you just described. It's called the relaxation response. The human brain loves to focus on things that are of interest or of need, and then it needs a complete different change of activity. And when we overschedule children, whether it's going from work to work to work to work in a Montessori classroom or overscheduling as family, we're not honoring the fact that the human brain needs to change its mode of activity and have some downtime. It can't always be on focus. That's imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
It reboots itself by doing counterbalancing activities, like going from physical to intellectual or artistic to social. That's really healthy for the human brain. It actually reboots the attention.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you. I wanted to take a minute now that we've talked about some of the benefits, and these are probably not all of the benefits, but they were ones that we thought were big items. But let's take a minute right now for all of you who are here today to think about what are some of the things that you actually do in your family life with your child or children, or with your partners, that actually helps you to balance things out, to balance all the things that you have to do and all the things you have to schedule out. So we're going to give you just a minute to quietly think about that. If you would like to share something, we'd love to hear from you. Write it into the questions area on your control panel, and we'll let others know about what you were thinking and what kinds of things you've tried with your own family, your own children, to balance things out. So let's just take a quiet moment. Have about 10 seconds left. If anyone would like to write something into the questions area, we would be happy to have you do that. I want to just say I see many people here today that have been here before, and some who are really regulars on in our viewers section. So thank you so much for coming today. So I don't see anybody sharing their ideas yet, so we're going to go ahead because that's the next part of what we wanted to talk about, is how do we do some of these things. So when we think about balance and balancing our lives, balancing our schedules and our activities, we can think of the broad picture of balancing the whole family. But then when we narrow it down to each person in the family, and in this case, we're looking at your child, we want to take a look at your child's development. And what does it mean for your child's development when they have a balanced life? And what kinds of things help to balance their lives? And so we, again, put up some big headings that are pretty broad, and we wanted to talk about how balance really helps in terms of physical development. And so here's a very concrete, illustration of a child on a balance beam. and that really goes with that. That's quite a good metaphor, I think, for when you're balancing your schedule in your life. It also helps you balance out physically as well. So, so we have a dog in the audience also. Correct. Okay, so we have some categories. We have physical, intellectual, emotional, social, moral / character, and creativity. And before we get going on our thoughts, let's look at what Pecky said. Pecky says things that her family does are gardening and evening walks, help to balance out their whole day, their whole week, their lives. Thank you, Pecky. And Jean-Paul, glad to see you back as well. Let's see, he says, greetings, dear panelists, thank you. He says, I've tried to organize an activity that takes us out of our comfort zone so that we have both a challenge and the chances to work them out or figure out together how to navigate a new situation. That's very interesting. That really does switch it up, doesn't it, Jean-Paul? As Jonathan was saying, if you introduce them to a whole new activity, that's really going to change the way the brain is thinking about things and refocus that. So thank you both, Pecky and Jean-Paul, for writing those things in. If anyone else has any thoughts, please go ahead and write those in. Meanwhile, let's take a look at these other titles that we have here in terms of what does balance do and what kinds of things can we do to help them balance in terms of physical development, intellectual and development, and so forth.
So I'll take a shot at intellectual, and I'm going to channel Cheryl Allen here because I know this. Reading with and reading to our children, and discussing what we're reading or what we're viewing, and then just having conversations with children with questions that evoke their curiosity. I wonder what how the moon got out there, or whatever it is. So it's both the reading, the literature, and the discussions, and it's just having discussions with children that are based on really compelling questions that raise everybody's sense of inquiry and curiosity. They sound so simple, but in this age, this fast-paced age of internet and work and everything, it's so easy to forget those two very simple things to do with children that really stimulate their intellectual abilities and balance. How did I do, Cheryl?
As you gentlemen, I absolutely agree with you. And make time to let your children see you read. To role model that, because a lot of times, we read after they go to bed. We read our own stuff. So take a few minutes. But I want physical and intellectual. And I think John and I are just tag teaming off each other today. I was mentioned this earlier, and it reminded me that my son had a tough time with math one year, and he just hated to sit down and do his math problems, and it would take him forever. And finally, we got to the point where we said, okay, you need to do this. Do you want to go for a run first? Or do you want to go for a run now? Or do you want to do this now? And he would go for a run and he would come back. And I'm telling you, he could go for a run and do the math problems when he came back, and shower and do the math problems when he came back in the same time that that it would take him to do the math problems if he hadn't gone for. It just completely changed how he managed it and how he felt about it. You know, the anger that he felt about having to do something that was an intellectual challenge. So all three of those, physical, intellectual, and emotional, were kind of wrapped up in one for him, and that really helped. And he became a really good runner.
I'm glad you said that, Cheryl, about it being wrapped up in one. I don't want you to look at this list. We don't want you to look at this list and think, oh my gosh, you're asking me to balance, and now I have to make sure that I'm hitting on all of these with my child. So look at it in your daily culture of your family. So you know, you think to yourself, you know, the kids are all involved in some sort of physical activity. You know, of course they go to school for the intellectual, but am I hitting the multiple intelligence? Because one of my kids is really linguistic, but another one is really mathematical. So I'm going to expose my other child to something that is outside their comfort zone or outside their strength. And then think about emotional intelligence too. How am I meeting the emotional intelligence? And it doesn't have to be activities, but it can just be conversations, or how you handle situations. You bring up those topics during those times. Same with social development, moral, character, and creativity. So it's how you kind of communicate and express yourself on a daily basis with your kids that could hit all those different parts of your child development. And it doesn't have to be specific activities or structured time. It's just integrated into who you are as a family.
And I think
that's a
Cassie,
really important point.
Cassie, your point on conversation is just so important, because we tend to have a lot of distractions in our adult lives, you know, where we have devices that are pinging and dinging and pulling us away from those conversations, old-fashioned conversations. So perhaps that's part of your balanced time, as we take some time away from those devices that pull our attention away from one another, because I feel very confident that parents do a great job and are very present for their children when we have a chance to say, okay, I'm intentionally creating this space and this time for that to occur.
Absolutely. I'm going to do a little plug here. Tim Selden and I just published a new book called Montessori for Every Family. And the point that Dorothy just made about technology, there is a section in there about how your family can set some ground rules or some parameters around the use of technology, and it makes it a little bit easier for you. The other thing that is in the book that we suggest, and it talks about how to do this, is taking some time every day to be together, doing whatever work we need to do. So Cheryl mentioned read in front of your children. And one of the things we suggest is that your whole family's in the same room together, but they may be doing different things. Mom may be reading, the other mom may be sewing, dad might be, again, reading a newspaper or a magazine, or doing some kind of calculations for a woodworking project that they're doing. And the children may be doing homework, or they may, if they're school age and they have homework, or if they're younger, they may be putting together a little puzzle or some other activity, but everybody's in the same room together. So everybody sees that each of them have different things that they're going to be doing during that particular time of the day. So if you want to know more about that, you can get our book.
It's a great book. Thanks, Lauren. I want to drill down a little bit on emotional development. The two things that come to mind for us to think about as parents and as teachers is, are we giving children, young people, enough positive feedback? And I don't mean praise. We're not, as many of you already know, we're not into good job, because it builds emotional dependency and it doesn't give the child any information about what you observe them doing. So the different aspects of this positive feedback that come to my mind are celebration, which is, hey, I just love, look what you were able to do, just celebrating children's increments of progress and effort and accomplishment. Appreciation, I want to thank you for doing that. Acknowledgement, it's like, I noticed that you were able to do this all on your own. And encouragement, I believe that you're making progress and I know you'll be able to solve this problem. So children, as they build their own sense of self, they need human beings, both children and adults, giving them positive feedback about what they're doing, just as we adults need that. And then the other side of emotional intelligence is empathy. Are we spending time talking about our feelings, modeling our feelings in really respectful and honoring ways? Are we inviting children to talk about their feelings? Are we inviting children to, as we read something with them or to them, what do you think that character was feeling? So if I were to bucket these two, it would be, celebration and appreciation, and empathy really builds a healthy emotional child.
Absolutely. Thanks, John.
And making sure that they understand that emotions are healthy and they're natural. And you use the word manage and not control. And like John was saying, in a respectful way. But I think that's something sometimes we forget is, we're wanting to control it. And we just need to have our kids understand that there's ways of managing it that will be healthy for them and healthy for other people around them.
And in case you're not familiar with it, although it's been out years now, I would really recommend Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence. Really breaks down 5 different components of being an emotionally intelligent human being.
Great. I want to just say that one of the things that I learned during my time when my children were young and I was parenting is I learned about not categorizing emotions and judging emotions. My parents were really into, that if you got angry, that was a bad thing to do, and if you were happy, that was good. And so there was this value judgment about emotions always in our family, and the ones that they considered not to be good, that they considered bad, you really weren't supposed to have those feelings. It basically was the message, stuff it, you can't even really acknowledge that you're angry. And I think that's an important thing for us to remember, if any of you grew up in households like that or anything, is that there are no good or bad emotions. There are just emotions, and it's how we handle them or manage them, as Cassie said, that makes a difference in our behavior and in how we interact with other people. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, I think.
Well, and just to flesh that out even more, Lauren, thank you for saying that. I think that for those of us who were parented more traditionally with that kind of judgment of certain emotions are okay and certain emotions are not good to have or harbor or express, it's anger. That's a bad one. Don't be angry. It's fear. Well, don't be afraid. Just buck it up and go do it. And it's, it's sadness. We still sometimes put those labels on, well, don't feel that way, or don't talk about it if you feel that way. And that really causes children to either act out their emotions in disrespectful ways or stuff them, which is obviously not healthy.
Children and adults.
which could
So
lead us
watch ourselves. Sorry, Dorothy.
which could lead us to creativity, because creativity is a healthy place to express emotions. I mean, a child who is scribbling out that anger, that's an appropriate place to let that go. And we can see with the artwork of children that they really, for the younger the child, the less they are in what they're creating and more in that process of I am processing a part of me. And so you may have wonderful collections of visual artwork that really don't have meaning to the child anymore, because it wasn't about, this was my scribble because it's a picture of I don't know, perhaps something exploding, and this is me being mad. That's not the point of it. The point of it was that this was an avenue for my expression of my emotions, and I'm done with it now. And so having materials, whether it be scarves for dancing or dress up clothes for acting out, or art carts that have a range of expressive materials, give children healthy areas to express emotions.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to bring up too is we have sometimes we'll have a habit of naming the emotion for the child. So if a child is, crying or something, we'll say, I see that you're frustrated, or see that you're angry. And that seems like a good idea to help kids recognize it. But when the kids get older, a lot of times they'll say, I'm not angry, I'm not frustrated, and it causes more of anxiety. So name your own emotions when it's happening, or through literature, or through watching shows on TV. You can say, it looks like by the way they're acting that that person is angry, or what do you think that person is? And then they'll start being able to identify their own emotions and their own feelings and be able to label it. But try to give them that agency to be able to speak to it themselves, and you not put a label on it.
And I think with older kids too, Cassie, because they have a little more experience and a little more knowledge of different types of emotions, you can say to an older child, and I'm talking elementary age and older, it seems like you might be a little frustrated right now. And so you're not actually placing that emotion on them and saying you are frustrated right now. You're saying it seems like you might be frustrated. And for an older child, they often will say, no, that's not it. I'm disappointed or whatever, discouraged, because they do have a better knowledge and a better experience base for naming their own emotions. So I think that's important to remember too.
Yeah, and usually I would just say with the students, I would say, something's up right now. I can feel the emotions, I can feel the energy. If I asked you to label it, what would that be to you? And they're usually able to come up with something. And sometimes they can't. And I always say, and it's okay if you can't. It's okay if you can't define it at this point in time.
Absolutely.
What you're both talking about is actually the very first component that Daniel Goleman talks about in being an emotionally intelligent person, which is quickly and accurately being able to identify how you're feeling.
Absolutely.
We talked a lot about, we talked a bit about cultural and societal expectations. And I think it's important to look at what was expected of you. And I know I have a boy and a girl, and I've always noticed the language that people use differently with them about how they react to things. For my son, oh, I see that bothers you. And for my daughter, she could react just the same way. And people say, why are you so mad about that?
Or dramatic.
Right. Yes, dramatic. Yes. I'm like, that's a fair call for her though. But but that the language, we always tried, we still try to make sure that they understand that they don't need to react differently because of their gender. And I think that that's a societal expectation that's and a cultural expectation that's only just being talked about widely. And as parents, I think we need to be very aware of it.
Absolutely.
I'll take a shot at that family generational one. When I look at my own parenting, and now as a consultant look at other people's parenting, until one becomes, I'm going to steal one of Dorothy's adjectives here, an intentional parent, making decisions based on what I understand about my child's needs, we will have a tendency to either superimpose what our parents did, our own parents did with us and to us, sort of just, well, that's the way it's always been in this family. It's just been passed, or we overcompensate. Well, my father gave me too many rules, so I'm not going to give my child any rules. So neither of those is intentional parenting. So I think it's important that as parents we look at, are my expectations for my child really based on good child development understanding of my child at this age and understanding of my child as a unique individual? Or am I superimposing some things that have sort of been passed generationally through my clan?
Excellent. There's a little saying that I have that someone gave me one time in my teaching career, and it says, prepare the child for the path, not, no, wait a minute, prepare the, no.
That's right.
Okay,
Prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child.
Yes, thank you, Cheryl. I knew someone would help me out. But it's really important for us to allow children lots of choices, try lots of things out, and help them get ready for being able to make choices and to have the confidence to try new things out, rather than, as John was just saying, we've already got in mind what they're going to be, who they are, what they like, or what they should like. And enjoy. And that's just not the way to go for a healthy, happy person to come out of it.
Well, I've always loved that line from the prophet where when talking about children, Gibran says, you can give your children your love, but you can't give them your thoughts because they have their own thoughts, and their thoughts dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot enter, not even in your dreams.
That's right.
Ouch.
Well done. Well said.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes we get out of balance because of educational expectations. And that can even go into family and generational expectations. That might be part of that, but it's also one that's societal as well. In certain places in the world, you're expected to do certain things, get certain kinds of education. If parents think that their child should be top of the class and go to Harvard, so it goes in both. It's an educational expectation, but it's imposed by the family, so educational expectations can move us out of balance with our children. Maybe, I always think of this, in recent years, recent generations, really, we in America have gotten to a place where we think everybody has to go to college. You're not going to amount to a hill of beans if you don't go to college. And it's such a shame because technical schools and other kinds of hands-on vocational type education is absolutely as important as going to an academic type of school that just gives you more academic education and maybe a degree that means something. So that's important too to remember.
Well, to piggyback on that, I hope I'm not going to light a fuse here, but how about the expectation that all children or my children in all of their subjects need to get an A? This is for, even though we don't generally give grades in Montessori unless it's at some of the upper levels. It's like, does every child absolutely have to get an A in every single subject? I thought, is that really about learning? Or is it creating some expectation that you're not successful unless you get all A's and a 4.0 grade point average? It's like, look at all the successful people who didn't.
Yeah, right.
And with the with the educational expectations, parents don't have to feel isolated and alone. For 5 days a week, you have a partner to lean on and who will lean on you as well, so that children who come from homes where education is valued, remember that the practitioner is there for you. And children have greater impact and greater success in schools when there is a partnership between home and school. So if you have questions, ask them.
Yeah.
Ask them. If you need help, ask for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump to the last one because I think it's so important. Confusion between balance and perfection. I hope that you understand that we don't expect you to be perfect, and we hope you don't expect yourself to be perfect. Balance doesn't mean perfect. Balance doesn't mean you're going to get everything right and everybody's going to get the exact same thing that they need. That's not going to happen. And if you believe that that's the way it's supposed to be, it's going to set you up for disappointment and cause more mental fatigue and anxiety. And the internet and social media has a lot to do with that, because if you're on that, you notice that there's families or people that are portraying a perfect balanced life, and you take a look at that and you think, I am nowhere near that. And you know what? They aren't either. So remember that. And if you're a single parent, if you're a parent in 2 different households and you're trying to manage a divorced family and you're trying to create balance between that, we know this is difficult. We know that some of these things aren't going to work for your situation. But if you are a single parent and you just carve out some time at the end of the day so that you are just in communion with your child, that's bringing balance to your family. So just remember that. Just any little thing that you can do to create that sense of love and communion, then you're in balance. And if you love, and Lauren has been using this term lately, if you have radical love for your children, unconditional love for your children, you're in balance.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cassie. That was great. And I think that it's going to allow us to go to this next slide, which I think actually we can go over really quickly. In fact, I don't even know if we need to. The only thing that I really see on here that maybe is a little bit different than what we've been talking about is when you're thinking about activities for your children, remember to think about their maturity level and their age, and that's not always the same. And so that's why we put the 2 things, but that when they're choosing activities for themselves, or when you're helping choose activities and things for them to be involved in, think about that maturity level and their age. Think about their interests. Again, the multiple intelligences. Different people have skills in different areas, and they're all very, very important to all of us. And then there's personality types that always, sometimes rear their heads. So those are some of the things that you can think about as you're looking at your own individual children and children, and what they are interested in and want to pursue for a while. Anybody want to add?
Yeah,
Yep.
one thought about that, Lauren. I think it's really healthy that once we start to think about our children in those sort of buckets, to ask ourselves the question, and is my personality type, intelligence, interest, is it really different from my child? In any way, am I superimposing, again, my expectations or my perspectives on the child? So I think it's good to identify what our children are exhibiting in terms of their unique individuality. But I also think we need to turn the mirror around and go, in any way, am I creating an expectation or a superimposition of my stuff on the child? Or as Montessori said, am I really following my child?
Absolutely.
Just a shout out.
Oh, sorry, Cassie.
I was just going to just a shout out to multiple intelligence, Howard Gardner. Look up his work, and there's so many great books out there to help you incorporate that into family activities.
There's actually, if you are interested, there's actually a multiple intelligence instrument where you can actually take a test to see how you tend to perceive reality or process information, and you can do the same thing for your child, so you can get some real clear data about how you see things and process learning different possibly than how your child sees things and processes learning.
Absolutely. Cheryl, did you want to say something?
To say, don't forget about being an introvert or an extrovert. It took us a while, as we had 3 introverts, and then my daughter was born, and at 3 she was scheduling her own play dates because I was not fast enough. Guess what? And really, it took us a while to consciously say, she is not trying to torture us. This is just how she is.
So Cheryl, if I had $1 for every time my oldest, at that point, teenage daughter said to me, John, Dad, I don't want to talk about my feelings right now. It's like, whoops, I did it again.
Yeah, luckily we realized pretty early, but it was there. And actually, I'm going to go right to this slide with something for that. Don't forget that an activity can have a balance of itself. I know, for my extrovert daughter, when she found an activity that required a lot of mental work as well as physical work, was really the first time that she slept for more than 5 hours a night in her life. Like, she just needed that real mental stimulation and physical stimulation, and 2 separate activities did not do it for her. So luckily we found something that required both. And it was very different. My son would go to her performance activity and they would say, oh, you should join us, because a lot of siblings were involved. It took a lot of time, and he would say, no way. Like, that's not what I would want to do. And they would come to me afterwards and say, you should have him. We need strong boys. And I was like, that's not his thing. You don't want him to do this. So you need to kind of be aware, however much everybody likes it, for that person, it's not right for everyone else.
Yeah. Some of these things are really easy to just say, okay, yes, we have to think about the amount of time that has to be put into this particular activity or this particular thing that the child wants to do or that I want to do. The cost, we have to think about that. We have a budget in our family, and we only have a certain amount of money, and we need to allocate it to different things. Consideration of other family members' times. Again, how do we fit all these things for all these people into our family schedule? And so that's an important piece. Cheryl just talked about, is it enjoyable? Is it challenging? Is it doable? Is it fulfilling? One thing for one child is not necessarily right for the other child. And so they are unique individuals with their own likes and their own choices of things. Another thing that we sometimes forget to think about is, what's the length of the commitment? When and how does it end, if it ends? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's something a child chooses and they do for their lifetime. Maybe it's something a child chooses and they find out after 6 months that it's not really what they want to do. So what is the length of the commitment? When and how does it end? I remember when Ellen was young, she took Irish dance, which I was very excited about, by the way, John. I think I was superimposing a couple of things on that one. But anyway, of my own, she decided she didn't like it. And so we had to say, okay, well, let's think about how you end something like this. You've been in this class for a while. And we came up with, she wrote a letter to her teacher and just said, this is just not for me. And I appreciate the time that you've spent with me and the things that I've learned, but, I'm no longer going to be in the class. So thinking about those kinds of things is important too. And finally, and then I'll let you guys talk if you want to. We have to think about discipline versus flexibility and adaptability. And for me, that kind of means, how much is this really, you have to work out every day for 2 hours or however long it is because that's what it takes to be a football star, you know? Or are they choosing something that has more flexibility and more adaptability in the choice that they're making? So those are all things you want to look at as you talk with your children and think with your child or children about activities that they might want to choose. All right, we've officially gone over. I just want to mention that, but we will finish.
We're in balance. On that third one down, I'm wondering whether we want to add a word, consideration of other family members' time and needs. I mean, we've spent a lot of time getting in tune with what is meaningful to this child or that child or their style. Isn't another part of life learning to, well, even though this might not be my thing in this family activity, other people enjoy it, and so I'm going to enjoy it with them. We don't want children to be totally self-centered and narcissistic. Well, it's all about me. So I think another form of balance is you're going to get an opportunity to explore and express your needs and interests, and we're going to give you opportunities for you to enjoy other people expressing their needs and interests.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Okay, and just a little reminder here at the end. Family meetings can help you and your family from being overscheduled into being more balanced. And so you notice on the one photo on the left, this person is obviously overscheduled. Post-its on the steering wheel are really over the top. But then you look at the family on the right, and the young girl there is holding what I would guess is a talking stick, and it's her turn to talk at the family meeting, and they're having a discussion about, you know, what the schedule is and who, you know, how we're going to work it out. Family meetings are a place where you can talk about pretty much anything with your family and really work together cooperatively to figure out what really is best for, as John said just a minute ago, for everyone, not just for one person, but for everybody who's in the family. Anybody else want to add to that? Good. All right, so we're going to say thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your being with us today. We have lots of people here returning and new. Come again next week. Next week, we're having a really interesting webinar, different from our usual ones. It's pre-recorded, although Cheryl and I will be there live to introduce it and all, but it's a pre-recorded interview with a couple of Montessori alumni, and it's called Environmental Science and Montessori. And so if you want to hear from some Montessori alumni who have graduated not only from high school, but also from college, and their thoughts on what's influenced their lifestyle and their life choices, join us for that one. And then on February 8th, we're going to do a webinar that involves some information about Dr. Maria Montessori's life and the revolution in education, which not only affected children when she was around, but affects the children that are in Montessori today. So join us for that. And anybody have anything else they need to add before we go? All right, we're going to say goodbye for now. Thanks so much for joining us today.